Hey, everybody. Welcome to the back room. Fun show today. We have Kat Abughazaleh. We're going to talk to her in a few minutes. But first, I want to thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com, and we'll read a few next time. All right, let's get to our two big things. But first...
They were incredible. When I went to the courthouse, which is also a prison, in a sense, they signed me in. And I'll tell you, people were crying. People that work there, professionally work there, that have no problems putting in murderers, and they see everybody. It's tough place. And they were crying. They were actually crying. They said, I'm sorry.
Oh, Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump. Yeah, you know why they were crying? Because it took so fucking long for them to see you get there and be arrested. That's why they were crying.
But if by checking in, as he said, meaning while they were fingerprinting him and arresting him and telling him he's under arrest for 34 felonies?
Yeah. I'm sorry, Mr. Trump. Your cell won't be ready till 1 o'clock. It's being cleaned.
But I have VIP status.
Oh, my God.
Early check-in.
What did they were all crying. Yes, they were all crying. It's so sad, Mr. Trump. I'm sorry I have to DNA swab you. I'm sorry, we have to check. We have to do a rectal exam. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Well, somebody would be sorry if they did that.
I mean, nothing he says is true. And this is just proof positive because we know Michael Isikoff, who's a fantastic reporter, got some great background information on this. And nobody was crying. Absolutely nobody was crying. And the only issue they had is apparently his little fingers were very dry and they had to lubricate them.
God, you just gave me the best diet for today because I've lost my appetite.
Apparently they were too dry to get a good fingerprint, so they had to lubricate them, and that made the fingerprints better.
Well, he had a bad week, I'd say. Let's go through it real quick. On Tuesday, he had the Tucker Carlson interview on Fox, where, like, if you haven't thought he's insane, that hopefully put the nail in the coffin for you. On Wednesday, Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg basically said "fuck you" to Jim Jordan and the GOP, and filed a lawsuit to block their House inquiry into his investigation. On Thursday, New York State Attorney General Letitia James had Trump sit with her for, 8 hours in a deposition regarding her $250 million civil case against him. On Thursday, special counsel Jack Smith, we learned that he is now focusing a big part of his investigation on the fundraising grift, all of the money grifting emails between the election and January 20th when Trump left office. The obvious theft of give me money for this, but I'm going to use it for that. Like, it's about time we're learning that. And that could be big. All those stolen election claims. You know, this is wire fraud. This is not kid stuff.
And this is also how Steve Bannon got arrested by DA Bragg, was the same exact charge. He was saying that he's building a wall and he's taking the money for something else.
Yeah. No, it's illegal to make false representations.
In the mail.
In the mail to swindle people out of their money. Also on Thursday, Court of Appeals in the E.G. Carroll rape and defamation case refused to decide, this is really interesting, refused to decide whether Trump was doing presidential work when he denied raping her, which basically, in effect, called her a liar. So that's where you get the defamation. And so the judge left that unresolved, which is kind of bizarre. It doesn't really impact the trial that's going to start on the 25th. That's the battery charge. So he's facing a shitload of trouble there as well. And then another thing that was a little complicated is that E. Jean Carroll was on record as in a former deposition saying that nobody was funding her case. And we learned that LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman is in fact backing her. So there was a judge who, although he denied Trump's request to move his trial date over this so he can take more discovery of her, he did grant an extra hour for deposition of E. Jean Carroll. But he did say, quote, that the funding of her case, quote, has nothing to directly do with the ultimate merits of the case, but might prove relevant to the question of her credibility, the plaintiff's credibility. another really interesting thing, and this is something I've been harping on, because I think Weisselberg, the former CFO of Trump Org, that sucker's going to flip. He's due to get out next week. He served 5 months, and the rumor has it is that Alvin Bragg and the prosecutors in New York are pressuring him to give them incriminating testimony about Trump in the hush money and fraud cases, and that this guy is looking at spending the rest of his life potentially in prison, and that ultimately this pressure is going to cause him to flip, and that could be the linchpin in all of this.
I'm going to have to disagree. I don't think he's going to flip. I think he is dedicated to Trump in ways that we can't totally foresee, and he will be willing to do the time, unfortunately. I hope he flips, but I don't see it.
Sammy the Bull Gravano. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, people flip, but
he was as loyal as you can get to the big guy.
Well, I hear from a friend that his wife is very nice, but he's awful.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do Trump's books, you've got to be a pretty awful human being.
That's what I hear.
The other thing, and I keep saying this too, is that I think not just Weisselberg, but where this overall investigation is going to go against Trump is Pence. I think we're all so trained to see what we see and then formulate our own opinions and shape our own narratives and throw in some conventional wisdom and say, this is what's going to happen or this is what's not going to happen. But yet time after time after time after time, we sit back and we go, oh, shit, didn't see that coming. And I'm telling you, there's something going to go on here with Mike Pence, coupled with people like Weisselberg, that no one's really been factoring in. Weisselberg, obviously, they have this week, as I just mentioned, but that there are people that are going to play a very pivotal role in bringing Trump down.
Yeah,
and things that we're not necessarily seeing because the Justice Department, the DA's office, they don't telegraph what they're doing. They don't give out all the evidence. We don't know what they have and where they're going.
I thought it was interesting when we had Paul Abughazaleh on last week, and he said that Pence wouldn't lie, that he was incapable of lying on the stand. I hope that's true.
Yeah, look, just ask yourself logically, if it was now virtually impossible for Donald Trump to run and be nominated, if for some reason he was out of the picture.
Well, wait, what?
Well, hang on. Hang on. And you are a Republican. I'm not talking about a MAGA Republican. I'm talking about all the people that we know, many of whom we've had on this show, all those moderate Republicans and independents. Who would their dream candidate be?
I don't think it's Mike Pence.
Not Mike Pence.
Jen, I have to take serious. I'm offended by that, Jen.
But Mr. Pence, what do the American people think?
The American people like the American people because the American people, unlike other people, are American people. No, seriously, he's got the faith thing. He is a guy that, to your point, has been relatively honest and trustworthy.
In the Trump scale, he's incredibly honest.
He lacks that special sauce, that charisma thing.
You mean any charisma?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess he's not terribly charismatic, but neither are the other ones. Who's charismatic? Nikki Haley?
Are you saying Mike Pompeo isn't charismatic?
That's exactly what I'm saying. All right, so the other big thing, the Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas. I mean, now we learn that not only did Harlan Crow whisk him around the world on his jets and yachts and all that, but that he bought his mother's house, which he and his mother and the family of his deceased brother own collectively, and never disclose this. And there are laws that you have to disclose, I think, real estate or any transaction over $1,000. And this was $130,000.
And he renovated the house.
Yeah, well, and then Harlan Crow was like, well, I was intending to make this like a museum someday, blah, 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 blah. Like, Harlan, we don't give a fuck what you were intending to do. Okay, you're not the issue here. The issue is Mr. SCOTUS, who didn't fucking disclose what he's legally required to disclose.
It's just like Trump. There are no consequences. Right?
Yeah.
Justice Roberts believes that well enough should be left alone at all times. Then why would you bother? You know there aren't going to be any consequences.
Yeah, and not a peep from Roberts. I mean, Roberts at one point could have gone down as one of the better Chief Justices. And his legacy, he has just literally watched, you know, the hardcore, you know, Clarence Thomases, the Kavanaughs, the Gorsuches, the Alitos, like all these people have just turned that court, and the Republican Party has turned that court into a cesspool. And he does not seem to care, which is really bizarre.
No, but he does care about the leaker, apparently. He did a big investigation about the leaker of the court, and nothing ever happened anyway. But just going back to the corruption of Thomas, not only did Crow buy his mother's house, his 97-year-old mother's house, he bought the house next door and tore it down because apparently they were noisy neighbors.
Yeah, well, I think it was two empty lots that were part of this deal too. And, you know, not just Roberts, but crickets from leading Republicans, like nothing. Imagine, I mean, Hunter Biden's laptop, which, I mean, all we know now, if you ever listen to Sean Hannity, all you ever hear is Hunter Biden had a laptop. We don't know what's in it, but the scandal is that he had a laptop. That's all we know, is that he owned a laptop. Here we have such egregious, blatant, shameless corruption over and over and over again. And these people don't say a word. And
Yeah, but
the fact that you have Jim Jordan, you know, wanting to investigate Bragg.
the same people that won't say a word about Clarence Thomas are the ones that won't say a word about Trump, who tried to overthrow the government.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the hypocrisy is unbelievable. All right, so let's get to our winners and losers this week.
My winner is National Public Radio for not putting up with Elon's bullshit and suspending their 50-plus Twitter accounts, and I hope other media outlets follow. And my loser is the Pentagon for letting Jack Douglas Tushira, a 21-year-old National Guard airman barely out of high school, have access to some of the country's most sensitive classified information. It's insane.
My winner, U.S. senators. 5 senators on Wednesday asked the Justice Department to investigate whether the civil rights of Mr. Jones and Mr. Pearson or their Tennessee constituents have been violated. My loser, Florida. Florida legislature passed 6-week abortion ban, which would be among the most restrictive in the country.
My winner, Tennessee State Reps Justin Jones and Justin Pearson, the Justins, who in a colossal backfire were reinstated by the Nashville Metropolitan Council after being expelled last week by the blatantly racist state legislature's Republican supermajority. My loser, Tennessee Republicans, who made rock stars out of the Tennessee Three and galvanized the state's Gen Z electorate to vote like hell against them in 24. That brings us to the weekly rant. I want to talk about the GOP's continued and intensifying war on women and reproductive rights. Republican men are obsessed with the uterus, obsessed with the vagina. Now, don't get me wrong. As a red-blooded heterosexual American male, I've always had a particular fondness for the vag myself. But the difference is I appreciate it, I respect it, and I know it does not belong to me. I know that I have no business being in it or anywhere in its general vicinity unless I'm invited to do so. But that's not how Republican men think or what they feel. Republican men actually think they own the vagina, every vagina, and therefore they're hell-bent on controlling its every move. What goes in, what goes out, what grows in the uterus, and what doesn't. And their latest attack on women's reproductive rights occurred just yesterday in Florida. Governor Ron, I never met a vagina I didn't want to control, DeSantis, at 11 p.m. last night, under the cloak of darkness and relative secrecy, signed a bill which will ban abortions after 6 weeks. Most women don't even know they're pregnant within that period. This is a draconian measure straight out of The Handmaid's Tale. The Republican Party spent 50 years trying to overturn Roe v. Wade until they finally did, thanks, ironically, to Donald Trump, the man who's likely paid for more abortions than anyone in history. Then it was the abortion pill and interstate travel under attack. They just can't stop, no matter the consequences. Perhaps the silver lining in all of this, the collateral damage, if you will, is that the GOP is hugely out of step with an overwhelming majority of Americans who want conservatives out of their vaginas and uteruses. We've seen huge pro-choice victories in Kansas last year and more recently in Wisconsin, and I suspect the GOP will keep losing as Democratic candidates, like my Congressman Pat Ryan did last fall, make abortion rights their central and winning campaign message in 24. All right, let's bring out Kat Abughazaleh. She is a senior video producer at Media Matters, and she graduated from George Washington University in 2020. Kat, welcome into the back room.
Thanks for having me.
So before we get into all the amazing stuff you do, work-wise, I want to talk a little bit about you, so our listeners can get to know who you are. You're 23?
I'm 24 now.
24. I think I have mayonnaise in my fridge that's older than that. And I don't mean that in a negative way, because I think you're amazing. You're smart and funny and witty and biting and righteously indignant and engaged and engaging. So, which is not, I think, a lot of 24-year-olds today. So I totally commend you, and it is great to have you on with us today. I want to ask you about your name, Abughazaleh?
Abughazaleh.
Abughazaleh. What is the origin of that?
It's Palestinian. So my father is an immigrant, and I'm pretty much good with any pronunciation as long as it's a good faith attempt.
But it does answer the question of why Abu or Abu.
Yeah, it means father in Arabic. And so some people are always like, why do you abbreviate it to that? And I'm like, because no one wants to say Abughazaleh. It's scary.
Do most people get it right, or do most people get it wrong?
Oh, most people get it wrong. People that speak Italian or Arabic usually get it right. The Italian one was surprising, but they're pretty good at it. And Spanish too.
So it has to have almost like a melodic, like Abughazaleh.
Abughazaleh.
Abughazaleh. Yeah, there we go. There's the Italian. You did it much better than me. So you are known for awesome TikTok videos and similar content on Twitter. You are a lefty. I'll call you a lefty. I'm a lefty. You're a lefty. And I don't mean throwing. I mean politics. And you are specifically known for mocking Republicans and the Republican parties, specifically Fox, Tucker Carlson, and those guys. Very deservingly so. But that's not the environment you grew up in, like that kind of space.
No, not at all. I grew up in Texas, which, we all know Texas. And my grandmother was very active in the GOP. When she died in 2020, I inherited her mink coat that she wore to Nixon's inauguration, which is like a little fun fact when I go out in DC in the winter. And it was like a big part of our lives. I mean, my parents were more moderate, and we've had this transformation together, my mother and I. But I mean, if you grow up in Texas, that's usually what's expected. And I was always interested in politics since I was super little, and I loved listening to my grandmother talk about it. And so I just kind of adopted the same things as many kids do.
Mm-hmm. And so your mom has shifted her political leanings?
Yeah. She and I have just kind of grown together and experienced all these things. I moved to Tucson halfway through high school, and in Dallas, everything is kind of like sequestered by, income or where you grew up. And my family on my mom's side is all from Dallas, and they were all like in the same neighborhood. And then I moved to Tucson, and I was exposed to like actual diversity. And that hadn't been something I had experienced before. And it was a complete shift in my worldview, because before, if you're a conservative in Dallas, you can just say, oh, well, the bootstrap myth and things are going great for me, and just pretend that's the same for everyone else. And it wasn't. It was a big shift in my life, and seeing friends that are incredibly smart but couldn't go to college even with financial aid because they had to help their family or it just wouldn't cut it. And that really made an impact on my mother and me.
Mm-hmm. But your dad is still on the other side, the dark side?
Yeah.
Ish?
He's a big capitalism advocate, last I heard.
So is he like in that fiscally conservative, socially liberal camp, or not quite the liberal camp yet?
I honestly couldn't tell you. I don't talk to him that much.
Oh, I have one of those parents too. So
yeah, a lot of us do.
Yeah, mine probably watches more Tucker Carlson than you do. Is Fox responsible? I know we're going to get into Fox a lot in a minute, but I just wonder, like, what has poisoned the minds of people in the last 20 years or so? And I guess it is Fox.
I mean, I guess, but also, the last 10 years, 8 years, whatever you want to say, has radicalized so many people. I have family members that, my mom's side, they're all like conservative. That was like a joke between me and the cousins at like Christmas dinner. Sorry about the ambulances in the background. But that was like a joke. Do you want me to just wait?
No, I'm from New York City, so if I don't hear ambulances, that makes me anxious.
Awesome. But like at Christmas dinner, we'd like joke around if someone annoyed the other and we're like, we're going to tell Mimi that you're a communist. And so that's always been like a backtrack to everything. But I have some family members that are just full Q now, like full QAnon. And they studied sciences. Like they're very well educated, but now everything's about like a pedo cabal. And it's like, what happened to you? How much time are you spending on Facebook?
So
it's nuts.
Are they, when you have these like Christmas dinners, do they keep a place setting for JFK Jr. just in case he shows up?
I haven't been back to Dallas for Christmas in years, but probably I would hope so if they care so much about him.
So the last time you had like a family dinner, is it like what most people complain about? Like, it's just, can we please not talk about politics? Can we please stay away from the QAnon stuff? Like, is it that bad or?
It's like, it's just weird. I remember when Trump first got into office, we were at a wedding and I was talking to my uncle and he was talking about how you can't trust any of the media. And I was going to school to study journalism and international affairs. And so he kept saying, you can't trust the media, and then spitting out all of this misinformation. And I was like, well, what's your source for that? What makes you able to trust that source? And he just got really grumbly and then went to the bathroom and then came back and pretended that I didn't say anything.
Yeah, logic makes Republicans go to the bathroom a lot.
Mm-hmm.
My brother once said something to me like, Obama is destroying the world. And I said, how? And he goes, I'm not going to argue with you. And I was like, who's arguing? I'm just asking you to explain this massive thing you just dropped on the planet.
The world's gone. There's also DC is razed to the ground. There is nothing here.
Yeah.
As some guy in a suburb of like Des Moines. There's nothing in DC. Nothing. All the cities, you can't go outside.
Yeah.
You will be stabbed. I have like 20 stab marks.
Yeah,
in my
me too.
abdomen.
In New York. And San Francisco is the worst. Like, I think there are actual zombies in San Francisco.
That's what I've heard. That's what I've heard.
I heard it on Jesse Waters, actually, he was saying.
He loves saying zombies. He really does.
Yeah.
And you can't trust Jesse Waters. Who can you trust?
No. And so, okay, so who is Kat? And it's kind of interesting. I'm going to segue into this question. Are you a dog or a cat person? Is Kat a cat person?
I am allergic to cats, like severely allergic to cats. I'm allergic to anything that's like cute and fuzzy. But dogs less so. And so then I've heard all like the jokes of like, oh, you're allergic to cats. But yeah, I like cats. I can't touch them. My throat closes up if I'm there for too long.
So when you are not working all the time, what does Kat do? Are you like binging Netflix? What do you enjoy doing in your life that doesn't involve Tucker Carlson?
I appreciate that you asked that because I think a lot of people think that's all I do. And like all of us at my job have very enriching personal lives and like interests.
Yeah. Do you play an instrument? What are your hobbies?
Yeah. I learned how to play guitar during the pandemic. Wow. I'm trying to visit every museum in DC this year.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone through like 10 because it's been cold. It's been hard to get places. I watch a lot of anime. I read sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
Deep cleaning my apartment is very fun. I enjoy doing that.
So in guitar, I just started taking guitar lessons. I play the drums, but I just started taking guitar lessons.
How's that going?
Not well, because as you know, when you play a guitar, you have two hands, you have 10 fingers, and they're all doing very weird things. And some people's hands, the dexterity is different. I can play the drums and have 2 arms and 2 feet doing something different, but I can't. It's hard to translate that to guitar.
It's just basically an excuse to like sit around my apartment and sing. And so I don't like do anything super difficult. I have really small hands, so it's hard to reach like very far apart chords. Like it's physically impossible.
Right.
But it's a nice little thing to do that's relaxing and fun.
You didn't play at all
yeah,
as a
I bought
kid?
this crappy $30 3/4 guitar on Amazon.
Wow.
I just graduated college and then just sat in my apartment and built calluses on my left hand and realized I could never paint my nails again.
Yeah, the calluses hurt like hell. And you still 10 bar?
No, I stopped doing that after this last Halloween. I have never had customers like that. I don't know what has happened to trigger people, but I was like, there is no money that's worth this. Halloween bar crawl was like the most profitable night in DC, and everyone that I worked with, it was like 4 of us. We were like, that was not worth it. I don't care how much we made. That was not worth it.
Just because it work, or because people started recognizing you and being mean to you?
I got into multiple physical fights. I hit a
Physical
guy in the
fights?
balls with
What?
a bottle that I was pouring from because he went behind the bar and tried to grab me. One guy grabbed a gin bottle from over the bar and threw it at my coworker's head.
Jesus. Were you at a
Another
Trump rally or
guy-
something? Was this at a Trump
No,
rally?
it was nut. I have never seen and I've I've been a late night bartender in college, like till now. I've never seen customers like that. I don't know if the pandemic has just altered people's brain chemistry forever, but not worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get it. I mean, especially for a woman, it takes me 2 seconds to imagine how awful that probably is as a job. But
I mean, yeah, but you make a lot of money because men are so stupid. No offense.
what? We are
This is the
not.
first time you're hearing?
Men are awesome. No, I'm firmly in the camp of men are stupid, and if women control, I say it all the time, if women controlled the world, it would be a much better place. Men are highly overrated. I have 3 daughters, 2 granddaughters. I'm so in love with girls and women and how different they are than men and boys, and how it's even getting worse, the toxic masculinity, and just it's a very sad place we're living in today with that. And that's something Trump just sort of poured gasoline all
Yep.
over,
Absolutely.
you know. So what before we shift into more meaty stuff, give us your favorite TV shows that you're watching. And
I am working my way through One Piece this year. That's also a goal for this year, is to catch up on One Piece, which has more than 1,000 episodes.
what is 1,000?
It's an anime. It's
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good. And I just finished Swarm, the new show on Amazon Prime, and that's like a satire of Beyonce's fans, and that was fun.
Oh,
that was interesting.
Okay.
Very
And
creative.
musically, give me your top 5 of all time musical
What-
artists.
Top 5 what?
Musical artists.
Artists?
Yeah.
Mac Miller, rest in peace.
Mhm.
The B-52s,
Oh,
loved
okay.
them since I was a kid. God, this is hard. I'm only saying this because I think that my 13-year-old self would be really happy if I did. I'll just give a shout out to One Direction.
Who doesn't love One Direction?
Lady Gaga and Nat King Cole.
Mm-hmm. Also, that's a great list. So the thing I want to start off with is woke. What does that mean to you? And would you say you're woke? Because that's a big thing today. Woke.
Yeah, everything is woke. Everything is woke. I mean, woke, they say, there's not a definition. It's like a sense or a feeling. Some of these conservatives try to say that there's like a definition about it. And it's just recognizing that there are systemic injustices. And like it has a history with the Black community. Like it has an actual definition. I mean, I guess if that's the definition, like, yeah, I'm woke. I just think it's been muddied up so much that it's gotten useless. It's like grooming.
Right. Or Soros backed.
Yeah, I am a Soros-backed woke groomer, according to many. So, yeah, I guess I would count myself as all those things.
Mm-hmm. Isn't woke just like if you give a shit about other people and their rights and what they feel, right? And what they need? That's woke, right?
It's like, hey, people should not have to suffer. Like, you shouldn't just have to survive. You should be able to thrive. And then they're like, oh, you're a woke SJW. And it's like, I just want people to not die
Right.
and be happy. No.
Have you heard of woke free beer? Have you seen the commercial for that?
Oh my God, it's so stupid. It's so stupid.
I mean,
Like
they have
the
this
big
guy, he
callback.
comes out, he's like this completely quintessential white jockey dude. And he's like, I drink conservative dads, ultra right wing, 100% woke free. What the
No, he
fuck is
comes out of the
woke-free
men's
beer?
restroom at a park.
Right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
that's
go
right.
over you,
No,
but
no,
that's
no.
very important.
Yes, I left that out.
Walks out of a men's restroom in a park holding the beer.
Right. Like what went on in the men's bathroom? That's what we should try to find out.
That's where all the men are hanging out.
And then how
working
about
boys.
Kid Rock's commercial? Have you seen that one? Where he's like
probably.
shooting.
I see Kid Rock and I just like blur it in my head.
Careful. He was almost vice president. He's
Stop.
shooting like cases
Stop.
of bud.
Oh my God, yes, that was so, he's
all
so dumb,
because
yeah.
like Dylan Mulvaney, that Bud like sponsored an ad with a transgender woman. I mean, like, do these people get so fucking triggered by this stuff? Why do you think it matters so much to them?
Someone rented a steamroller to go over like hundreds of cases of Bud Light. That takes so much effort. Why does this matter?
I guess it's not much different than like burning Elvis records in the 50s. It's the same ignorance and bigoted mentality. They never change, no matter how the world or the country seems to be changing. They just can't seem to change along with it. So you are a Fox News watcher. Your Twitter bio, you say, I watch Tucker Carlson, so you don't have to. You work for Media Matters, and that's a really good organization. They've had a lot of impact with lawsuits against Alex Jones and the Sandy Hook families. And how did you get to that specific kind of job?
So when I was at GW, I came to DC when I was like 13 on a school trip, and I was like, I want to live there because I loved politics and I loved journalism. And so I went to GW and studied international security and journalism. And my focuses in the IA part were like genocide and atrocities and extremism. And by the time I graduated, especially because I graduated right into the pandemic, I was so disillusioned by both of them. I had spent 4 years in DC watching the Trump administration, watching my professors be like, you know, this is not the normal thing, and then teach us the normal instead of adapting.
Right.
And then same for my journalism classes. And I was seeing, you know, legacy media propping up Trump and just to get some ratings. And I was disillusioned with both of them. And I came across the MMFA job listing, and it seemed like the perfect mix of the two. Being able to be critical of the most important reporting apparati in the country, and also following a mission that I care about.
And your videos, your content on social media is yours, right? It's not
Yes.
Media Matters. But regardless, it's like they're the perfect blend of facts and info and humor and snark and, I won't say righteous indignation. I'd rather say chill indignation, because you do it, but you do it so gently. And I'm sure it threatens some people, but you don't go on the attack. And I think that's why they resonate with a lot of people, and why you resonate with a lot of people, because there's so much toxicity in this country today that it's sometimes hard to get your voice out there if you're just hitting hard. And you don't do that. But the net effect of what you do is that it really does hit hard. You get through because of the way you're delivering that. Was that something like took time to find your voice, or like a comedian who's finding his persona, or the first video was like that?
I mean, that's just me. When I write my scripts, it's literally, I sit in my living room and say it all out loud as I'm going and just type out whatever I say. I did debate in high school and middle school. And like, I like arguing. I like making a point. I like changing minds, but I hated the vibe of debate kids. I hated the, you know, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm going to talk really loud. I'm going to talk really fast. And I realized you can win a lot more stuff if you just lighten it up and try to make people laugh.
They also wear really bad clothing. Debate kids.
Sorry. What was that?
I said debate kids, they also wear really bad clothing.
Yeah, and that was a big thing. I love clothes, and I love dressing up, and debate boys were very threatened by that. And it's just kind of continued today. And that's why, you know, I'm very feminine, and I think that's why a lot of right wingers get really, really mad if I call them dumb, because it's a woman, and a woman who likes wearing high heels.
Yeah, well, one thing I've learned over the years is that racists hate to be called racist. Dumb people hate to be called dumb. Sexists hate to be called sexist because they don't like to think of themselves that way, but it's their behavior that brings that on. So what is your process? Like, are you working till 5 o'clock in the morning? Because I know you do a lot of watching Tucker at night and then having to put your stuff together. How late into the night do you go with your work?
So I actually have narcolepsy, which is like a brain condition that makes you really sleepy. Mm-hmm. And I have it really well managed after all of these years, but I take sleep very seriously. So my shift is 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. and I try to be in bed reading phone on the other side of my room by 11:15.
Wow.
Unless there's like a breaking news story and then we have to stay later. And then usually I try to get up at like 6 or 7, and that's when I record my videos or I'll add it to a script. And then I'll take a nap at like 2 for like an hour or 2. And that's nice. But yeah, it's just about managing the time. I do work in the morning, but that's not really work because it is my personal account. These are my personal views, my videos, and then I do my shifts from 4 to 11.
And what's the main distinction between the content you produce for yourself on social media and the work you're doing for Media Matters?
Well, for Media Matters, I'm a researcher. And so we're tracking narratives and we're posting things for posterity. So you can see that Tucker said this or Hannity said this on this date. You know, we work with our LGBT team, our gun team, our abortion team. So you can really, it's a great resource. It's one of maybe the largest library for things like this on the internet. And that's the goal of MMFA. And then my videos are just me shit posting, but also talking about things I care about. And so they're separate and I can just kind of have fun with it.
But there is crossover, like what you're doing at work sort of feeds into your personal stuff.
Yeah, it's things that like I already cared about. And so while I'm watching this, like might as well have some fun with it too.
Right.
And I've been able to do other things like the Mike Huckabee Kids Guide. I'm also doing one about conservative Amazon that's probably dropping next week. It's very stupid. And so, yeah, the crossover, it's just kind of natural.
And are you starting to get recognized by people when you go out and about?
Yeah, in really nerdy DC circles, but that's just DC. Like I went out with a friend who's a Hill staffer and the people at the table were like, oh my God, we love your TikToks. And I was like, where do you work? And all of them were like, The Hill. I was like, okay, that doesn't mean anything.
Right.
But yeah, I would, people say a lot of really nice things, but it's all fake internet points. And I just hope that my videos can help.
Does anybody on the right recognize you when you're out?
Oh, yes. I have seen someone who recognized me and their face went white. And that's yelled at me on Twitter. And then,
but I mean, on the street.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We were in the same place. And I just pretended I didn't know him and forced him into like 15 minutes of conversation while he stammered. It was fun. But there aren't a lot of right-wing people to like scream at you unless you go to Navy Yard in DC. So.
Yeah. I recently went down to outside the courthouse the day Trump was arrested, and I tried to interview a few MAGA people. I tried to pick out the well-dressed ones that looked the most sane. And no matter how many times you hear about them or you see them on until you are talking to them and you're just like, oh my God, I'm talking to a zombie. Like there's nothing inside. Like they are in a cult, and it's kind of crazy when you finally get the chance to ask the questions, logical questions. I mean, there's one guy, I said to him, why are you here? And he goes, well, I'm here to support Trump. And I was like, okay, so you don't agree with the arrest and the whole investigation or any of it? Nope. I said, but help me understand one thing that I've been just thinking about for years now. If Trump is right, that means everyone from Democrats to Republicans like Liz Cheney to the media, the courts, the Justice Department, the FBI, Raffensperger and local county election officials and secretaries of state and all the Republicans who testified they're all together in one big conspiracy against this incredibly honest, great man. And yep. What, do you know how crazy that is? Like, it's when you're standing there and you're like, all right, I gotta go. See ya.
No, it's nuts. It's the natural, I think people don't realize, like, it's the natural progression in Republican politics. Like, people are like, oh, things have changed so much since 2016. No, I mean, you had, like, the John Birch Society, and you had Reagan being put in power by evangelicals, and, like, you had the post 9/11 just absolute bonkers, off the wall stuff. And Trump was, like, the natural progression. The thing I don't get, and, like, I can identify with that, because, like, I have watched people I love have those thoughts. Like, I know the theories, all that stuff. I don't get how you look at Trump and you're like, that's the one. That is my guy.
That's it.
I know all of us, there is a cult for all of us. There is something that can draw any person in. I don't understand how he is that for so many people.
It's the
How?
craziest thing. I've said for
Like, he
years.
doesn't even look like a person.
Well, he looks better when you actually Photoshop his head onto Sylvester Stallone's body, which they do all the time. It's like, oh,
Like, that's not his real body?
why not? No, Kat, it's not. He's actually old and very blubbery. And
What?
sorry, I had to drop that on you. But I've said for years, whether it's people like Lindsey Graham or McConnell or any of these formerly semi-reputable, sane people, like you take a guy who is literally a sociopath. He's sadistic. He is corrupt as fuck. He's a traitor. He gets in bed with our enemies. He blew Putin on stage in Helsinki. He will not give you 1 ounce of the loyalty in return that you give him, yet you have thrown your careers and legacies away for him. Why? I cannot. That is the biggest question. Right?
Nuts.
I mean, I could see it for Mike Pence or someone else, Huckabee, who has your ideals, who walks the walk, talks the talk. Donald Trump? It is literally something I think anthropologists and sociologists and psychiatrists are going to be studying for hundreds of years. How he became president and how to this day, the fealty that still exists is mind-numbing.
I mean, you listen to speeches from like fascists and you're like, okay, those are like powerful speeches. They're horrible, but like they're powerful and they ping something primal in very scared brains, through history. But then you listen to one of his speeches and he can't even finish a sentence. And then he'll like talk about his uncle from MIT for like 5 minutes before saying something nice about Putin and then talking about like how many plaques he has. Like, that's not a speech. That's just an old man rambling.
Well, I think
and sniffing.
You just hit the nail on the head. He famously said, I like the ignorant, right? I think when you are like in the middle of nowhere and you're at the backyard barbecue and you're, roasting up whatever it is MAGA people eat at a barbecue, he doesn't threaten you. He's like your uncle, Lenny, who says stupid shit at the backyard barbecue. And hey, he doesn't make you feel stupid. In fact, to the contrary, he makes you feel legit. He makes the dumb racists feel legit. That's his secret sauce.
That is a great point.
That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
So you focus on Tucker Carlson. You focus only on Tucker? Or are you...
I mean, we all like have our shows. So I usually watch The Five at 5 o'clock and then Tucker. If someone's out, like we'll take over other shows. I was on Hannity in 2020 for the 2020 election when I first started the job.
Okay.
And then switched to Tucker in January 2021.
Mm-hmm. So who's dumber, Sean Hannity or Brian Kilmeade?
I gotta say Kilmeade. I'm sorry, I gotta say Kilmeade. Like, at least Hannity can kind of tell if you're lying to him. Like, if I think Kilmeade doesn't have a brain. Like, there is nothing going on behind his eyes.
Nothing. He's thinking of what kind of sandwich he's having for lunch.
Because some of the dumbest things, like when he's a guest host, I want to throw my computer out the window. Because it's like going to be, he's not even a good host. That's the thing, is a lot of these people on Fox aren't even charismatic enough to be hosts.
Right.
They're just weird. Like, he's a weird little man.
He is.
And Sean Hannity is too, but at least Sean Hannity has his sensei and he has his eclectic blend of martial arts. So,
and unlike Kilmeade, who doesn't have a brain, Hannity doesn't have a brain, but he has a very large head.
He has a giant head.
Giant head, so it looks like he probably has a big brain. And he tries to portray himself. He tries to portray. See, that's also the difference. Like, Hannity is stupid, but trying to be smart, whereas Kilmeade is stupid, and he's just trying to be stupid.
Yeah, he thinks he's smarter than he is, but Hannity also jolts at his desk, and I respect that. Like, I respect that in a man.
Mm-hmm. Who's more evil, Carlson or Jesse Waters, or Laura Ingraham?
Carlson, hands down.
Okay, so let's talk about Tuckums a little bit. Do you think his evil stems from the fact that his mommy left him when he was 6? and said, see ya?
I mean, a lot of people have like tried to speculate about this. I can't really tell. And I think, I mean, that has to have an impact on a kid, you know? And maybe she saw something the rest of us didn't. But I mean, either way, that sucks to be like a 6-year-old boy and your mom leaves. But he has so many other issues. His dad was, super homophobic, notoriously. I think he was just raised with this and then realized how much money there is in right-wing grifts and went all in.
Where did the Crossfire Tucker go? When was the change? What was the change? Why has he become this anti-American, racist, shameless character that he portrays every night? How did that happen? Where was his turn?
I mean, have you heard the tapes from Bubba the Love Sponge?
No.
Oh, they're on our site. Madeline Peltz broke those a couple of years ago, and it's Carlson on this radio show, and he says some of the most vile things I've heard in my life. He talks about how he would fantasize about like 14-year-old girls together, like experimenting on each other, except that his daughter was at that school because they were like talking about this fantasy of his daughter at boarding school. And he's like, I would love that if it weren't my daughter.
Like this. I vaguely remember this.
Yeah, yeah. And, he said a lot of racist stuff. He defended the guy from the documentary, Warren Jeffs was his name, I think.
Yeah. Cult leader.
Yeah, yeah. And he was like, well, consensual. He's like, it's not the same as just taking someone off the street and raping them and marrying them. Like you're going to take care of that woman for the rest of your life. So it's not the same. Referring to, child marriage. Those tapes are really abhorrent.
Do you know what NAMBLA is? You ever hear that?
Yes.
Okay. So a bunch of years ago, I saw an interview with one of the guys who was in NAMBLA, which is the National Association of Man-Boy Love. Okay. In essence, older guys who like to have sex with little boys. And when he was defending himself, he said, I believe that what a grown man and a 12-year-old boy do together is their business. And it's like, to your point about like consent, it's like, no, the whole point is a 12-year-old boy can't make that decision for himself. And when you hear them say, or Tucker Carlson say those things, it's sick. They're so diseased. I wanted to ask you, do you think the GOP is just so broken and so beyond repair that they're never, ever going to come back?
I mean, and I'm going to reiterate, just for clarity's sake, like these are my views. They're not MMFA's, but I mean, I think the GOP is doing exactly what Goldwater and his cronies wanted it to do. I think it's all playing according to the plan. And if you're thinking about some moderate GOP, I'm not sure if it ever actually existed at the core of it. Like, as someone you had it up front of it, but you have always had these people in the background wanting to say these things, rabid evangelists pushing forward these agenda. And if you're younger, you can look at it from a less partial point of view. I've noticed that with people my age as we look back at these things and we study them and we read them and we didn't live through them. So you're able to kind of see some of these connections. I'm sure there are plenty of older people that will listen to this and be like, that girl needs to shut up. But I think that the people that were in that moderate front that could work together, I don't ever think they were what was driving the GOP at the core of some of these people. Like, the John McCains, the people that liberals love to prop up, those are gone. Those aren't going to be a part of the GOP anymore. They aren't going to lend their legitimacy because that's what they were there for. They were lending legitimacy to the party. And now that's gone. And if you're staying in that party and saying, I want to be one of the sane ones, it doesn't matter. That's gone. You don't have to identify with the party. But if you are standing with the Republican Party with some faraway hope that it will one day come back together, that's not going to happen. And you're helping them more than you would like to.
I think there's a big measure of truth to what you're saying. You're 100% right. I used to watch like Ralph Reed, the evangelical, and just think like, this guy is Satan with a smile. But the difference is, it's like the movie cartoon with the dog runs into the pound and opens all the cages and lets all the other dogs out, right? That's what Trump did. He's the dog that let all the other racist, dumbass dogs out. And
they're emboldened.
That we never had. Like the KKK used to go out into the field at night in the middle of nowhere and burn their crosses. Now they're in the Tennessee State House. They don't care, right? So
Right.
that's what's changed, at least with the McCains and the Jack Kemps and the Alan Simpsons, like just a lot of guys like that, the Mitt Romneys, like inside they may have had certain beliefs and may have used the evangelicals and the Ralph Reeds to get their agenda across and presented themselves at least as being bipartisan. But I also got to say, I wish we could get back to those days when things were just ugly. They weren't insane. That's the difference. Ugly versus insane.
Yeah, there's that saying that the Republicans want to bring like the death of society and the Democrats want to be the managers of it.
Right.
Like they want to organize it. They want to be nice. And a lot of people are talking about how outspoken Gen Z is, and we're like not being given a seat at the table because we don't have anything to lose. We didn't even get like a glimpse of pre 9/11 life. Now we're looking at probably not owning a home. You have to have 2 jobs to have your own apartment.
Mm-hmm.
It's exhausting, and it's really frustrating when people in office are so insistent on decorum. Decorum this, decorum that. I don't care about decorum anymore. We have evolved beyond that, or maybe devolved beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
Because until we get back to reinstating like abortion or not wanting to have trans kids kill themselves, we can't play nice. Those are for when you can't respond to these bad faith attacks with a good faith approach. It's really frustrating.
Mm-hmm. It's really fascinating what you're saying about Gen Z, because I'm 63, and when Obama got elected, and even like years into his presidency, I would see him in the Oval Office and I'd be like, is he actually president? Growing up, I thought that will never happen. Someone like you who was born in 20 or 2000, 99. Your first awareness of the presidency was a black man. Like, it's just a different perspective of race. And I wonder when some people say that young people they're not active enough or they're just indifferent, it's because they grew up and Obama was their first president.
I mean, that's the thing for, especially like on that elder Gen Z scale, which is where I am. I've had a little cousin say, you were born in the 1900s. And I was like, shut up. But, every single thing has been marred by these giant events. And, our first consciousness is like either 9/11 or immediately after 9/11, because we're like 3, 4, whatever. And then you start to become a person. You start to like have interests. You're going into middle school. All your friends' parents or your parents get laid off at work.
Mm-hmm.
And then you are graduating high school. You're about to go into the world, and you have this disgusting, misogynistic presidential race, and everything is a mess, and you have never seen people this charged in your life. And then you graduate from college, if you go to college, or you're like just able to legally drink, and the world shuts down. And it's like, and you care about decorum?
But the most important thing we can do in this country is vote. So we've seen, I think, in the last few years, young people have come out and in some cases carried the election. Do you think people of your generation are active enough, vote enough? Because I think somewhere between 55 and 60% of the population votes. What if we can get 75% of Democrats to vote? We could have everything we want. Young people can have everything they want. But why is it so hard to get people, and especially young people, to the polls?
I mean, we are coming out like no young generation has before. And there are 2 things that older people need to do, because we're sick of watching people that are like 60 years older than us, 70 years in some cases, running the country. Not only do you have to entertain what we want, like you need to look at student debt relief. You need to address, crazy high rent prices. You need to address healthcare. Like there are things that we need that we can't afford. You need to look at your younger constituents and not just write them off, because we are about to vote in massive numbers because we have more people graduating every single year. So you need to do that, but you can't just entertain those. You have to give this generation a seat at the table. It's infuriating watching a panel on television talking about this topic, and everyone is Gen X or older. And you didn't even think to talk to someone who's like, I don't know, 30. if that,
Right.
they don't know what it's like to grow up with all of this technology and all of this mix. It's a mix of like wonder and hope, but also fear and powerlessness. It feels like everyone before got to have this kind of party, which is not even the case. There are so many populations that, like, I mean, the 80s for Black people under Reagan, that's like a nightmare. But all the people in power talk about this previous life like it was something amazing, and then still want to keep this ideal in their head. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. People don't understand the power that they have, but a lot of people just look backwards instead of looking forwards, and they'll whine about the past or what they don't have instead of really thinking about what they could have and what the path is to get there. Michael Moore talks about this all the time, where election day, that's the one day of the year where the janitor and the billionaire have the exact same power. But you hear people say, oh, my vote doesn't count, and it's infuriating, and I don't get it. I mean, there are other countries, Canada, other places in the world where they so appreciate their democracy and they turn out and vote in large numbers, and we in this country, we don't. And yet we
And we do it
complain.
on a Tuesday, to be fair, in the middle of the workday.
Well, now you're raising another issue. Like, you have this one party who's trying to make it impossible for people to vote and shamelessly doing it only in the Black neighborhoods and taking away the voting boxes. And they're slowly controlling the levers of government, the mechanism of elections. And that's why you have places like Wisconsin, where the electorate is basically 50-50 Democrat, Republican, but the state house, it's like a 3-1 margin in terms of Republican control, because they carve out through gerrymandering. It's like you have one party that's evil and one party that's trying to play by the rules. If you're in a gunfight, you got to bring a gun. And I don't know if the Democrats have that ability. But on the other hand, if you do look at the last 6 or 7 years, in terms of the major elections, special elections, amendments on choice and abortion, popular vote, like, Democrats kind of win everything. They lost the House by a small margin. So Democrats kind of do have the right message, but I don't think they have it with people of your generation.
They're antagonizing us.
Yes.
It's really frustrating to hear people talk about, like, progressives want all of this. And it's like, no, in every other country, if you look at like our peer countries, our allies, our Democratic Party is not to the left. Like, we're considered crazy because we want healthcare and like 9 months of maternity leave. And that's seen as like extreme here. And that's just a norm overseas.
Right. And plus they have leaders like Macron and Trudeau who are young and, represent the younger generations and a different perspective. America is kind of a backward country in so many ways. I want to jump back to Tucker for a second. Is there ever a moment when you watch him, when you look at him and you go, wait a minute, is there an actual human in there? Like, does he ever have a moment where you're like, oh my God, I see a light, a ray of light? Or is he just completely to you off the fucking wall these days?
It's really weird because he is the only Fox host that, like, I watch during primetime that doesn't share anything about his personal life. Everything, like, when he talks about family, like, it's never anything personal. He talks like an alien that's trying to make an argument about family and then claiming he has one. When he talks about animals, like last night he had a nutria, like the little rodent on his show. He likes talking about into animals. But everything else, it's like there's nothing in there. Hannity's done, but like his mixed martial arts. And Laura Ingraham talks about her kids, and Jesse Waters talks about his kids a lot. Tucker doesn't really talk about anything, even on his talk show on Fox's streaming service.
The expression is somebody sold their soul, but it seems like it applies so much more to him than to a lot of people. I mean, it's funny what you say about him, because I've been saying for a long time now that if aliens from another planet wanted to inhabit the Earth and like spy on Earthlings, but they needed like human life form to inhabit, it would be the Trump family. Because like with the Trumps,
That's so fair.
if you cut them open, Like you're not going to find like organs and like a heart. You're going to find like when they opened up Jaws, the shark, like you're going to find like old beer cans and like just like
Yeah.
wires that are going the wrong way. Like it's like they're not human. They don't have human emotions. They can't talk about anything. Have you ever seen a Trump talk about anything emotionally? It's like they're not human. And that's kind of what Tucker is like. What is the impact of your videos? Do you feel like you've changed minds, or are you changing minds? Has anyone ever said to you, "Oh my God, I see what you're saying. I agree."
Yeah, there's a bunch of really great responses that have it was my goal. I have a lot of people that were saying, I wanted to know about this, but I didn't want to watch Fox, or I don't have like the mental library to be able to contextualize it. And this was so helpful in that. Like, it's brief, it's entertaining, it's informative. And I'm like, that's what I wanted. But I also have people who are showing these videos to like their family that's full MAGA or full Fox brained, and telling me, I don't know if it's true, the internet, you don't know who anyone is, but telling me that like their mom or their dad was like, she has some points there, and have started to look at other news sources as a possibility. Because you just need like one solid crack in the mask to kind of break through a bit.
Right.
And it's really entertaining watching right-wingers have to begrudgingly agree when I say some things, because they also find Sean Hannity cringy. But yeah, the impact it's nice to know that this is helpful for people. I like seeing people quote tweet it or link it to someone as like an explainer, because that's the goal. That's the goal.
Now, you get a lot of nasty comments. You've gotten rape and threats. Why do you do what you do? I read a quote where you said, "The anger propels you. I feel like I'm doing something in a world where it is so easy to feel like you're not doing anything." And that's true. But are you afraid based on some of the stuff you get? Or do you just write it off to right-wing yo-yos?
I mean, it shows I'm doing something right. If they're so triggered that they have to send me a detailed threat about how they would rape me, and like if I ever saw them in public, they would be cowering. All of these people are cowards. I've seen people explicitly talk in like my quote tweets about attempting to sexualize me, to intimidate me. And in that case, it's just like you're telling on yourselves. If this is bothering you so much that you have to respond and you're trying to intimidate me, it says so much more about them and my work than it does about anything else.
But there's also the hypocrisy of all these people. We talked about evangelicals, and maybe this is just a narrow way of thinking, but I've always felt that these white right-wing freaks who are the loudest antagonists about trans and gay marriage, that these are the guys that can't wait for their wives to go to sleep so they can go in the basement and beat off to Harry Styles videos. You know what I mean? How dangerous is Fox today?
It's, my coworkers, they talk about this a lot. The old Fox, like when Roger Ailes was there, was meant to prop up the GOP. Now, without Ailes, it's gone the other way. Now you have GOP members of Congress saying bonkers stuff online in front of a camera on the floor so they can have 5 minutes on Tucker. And that's where I think the real danger lies, because it is the most watched cable news channel in the country, and it trickles down. Because if you don't watch Fox, but like you have a Facebook, you've probably seen someone that push a Fox lie without knowing where it came from. So that's one part of the danger, is to its viewers and to the conservative media that it influences. But the other thing is just how much it influences legislation and elections. The CRT, this transphobia, even in the midterms, when like all the anti-trans rhetoric, that's basically what the GOP ran on. Basically, they ran on Tucker's monologues. Tucker had a monologue one time where he said, if you are running for office, this is what you should run on. And it didn't play out like they wanted it to, and they're doubling down at Fox because that's what they care about. Fox is more important. And this year, when McCarthy was trying to become speaker, 15 times, Tucker listed his demands for McCarthy to get the votes. And McCarthy granted both of them. It was to get the January 6th tapes. And then he said, this was on the Tuesday of that week, he said to give Thomas Massie a Frank Church-style committee. Kevin McCarthy's voted in. Massey comes on the show on Friday to thank Tucker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the cable news host is running the country.
We're coming to our close here, and I just want to ask you like one more thing, which is kind of macro. How does someone of your generation, I mean, as a woman, you have less reproductive rights than women did 50 years ago. Someone your age or just a few years younger and are in school, worry about getting massacred when they go to school. The racism.
I remember sitting under desks because we had an hour-long lockdown and expecting that, you might have to fight, and you're like 13.
And then, like in Tennessee, the white robes and the white hoods came off and they just did their thing in public and they didn't care. And it was on CNN. Let's keep the white lady and get rid of the two young black guys. You see the fealty to Trump as a authoritarian. How does someone of your generation look ahead and stay positive when it's so easy to just go, shit, why don't I just fucking move to pick your country,
Well, that's expensive, first off. But also, what do we have to lose? The alternative to just sitting there is to let all of this take control. What do we have to lose? Seriously, an apartment? Maybe we get some other politicians in there, but we also flip a state blue.
Right.
We might have another state push some anti-trans legislation, but then another state will put up a shield law. If you don't do anything, that's what the other side wants. That's what fascists want. That's what hard right people want. They want you to do nothing. They want you demoralized. And I think that it's better to care about something than care about nothing.
It's really important that people like yourself and David Hogg and Harry Stisson, I think his name is, it doesn't matter what's coming at them. They are going to fight. They have made change. You look at Florida and after the Parkland shooting and David Hogg and the Parkland victims, and I know Fred Guttenberg very well, like they changed the laws down in Florida just because they got busy. It must be so hard for young people today to get busy because the headwinds are like never before. And it requires almost like superhuman drive and tenacity and strength to just keep going forward. I think people like you are so impressive, and it's so admirable, and it's inspiring what you're doing. And I hope you keep reaching people and changing minds. We have to change this landscape somehow. And your generation is so integral in terms of being a part of that change. So it was awesome to talk with you. Like I literally could talk to you for hours about so many things.
This was so fun.
Yeah, no, I hope you'll come back and we can continue the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Take care. That's episode 62. If you like what you've been hearing, and even if you don't, let us know. We appreciate the feedback. You can leave us a message at 845-307-7446. Email us at backroomandy@gmail.com or tweet to me at Andy Ostroy. And when you listen, please take a quick moment to rate and review. Those things are very helpful. I want to thank my co-producer, engineer, and editor, Matty Rosenberg, associate producer, Next Jen Hammoud, Cricket Lengyel for our artwork, Andy Hollander for our kick-ass music, Patricia Wind and the Epicurean for the Backroom Studio, and a big thank you again to our guest, Kat Abughazaleh. So keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and we hope you'll join us again next time. Have a great week.